Welcome back, blade fans. This old sword is here, and let me introduce you to a new TwoSun knife. Relatively just out. And this is the TS. I'm in the wrong knife company. TS366. It's a design by Rihe, R-I-H-E. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I got one or two other Rihe designs. Believe the designer is from somewhere in Europe, possibly Germany, but I'll see if I can give you a little bit more in the notes that I put up with this, along with a link to White Mountain Knives where I purchased this. And this was coming in, I think, around 80 bucks, less your 10% off using Old Sword as your discount code. That would drop it down about 8 bucks. But don't hold me to those figures. They're kind of off the top of my head. This dropped in the other day, and I wanted to get it out to you so you can have a good look-see. As much as many of the newer TwoSuns have been coming in D2, this is not. This is in Sandvik 14C 28N. Thank goodness. I think that we've, I don't want to be a D2 basher. It's a good steel. Many custom knife makers still use it, etc., etc. But I find that 14C is quite a nice steel for holding an edge, for being stainless. It was developed for kitchen cutlery. And there's a number of reviewers out there and sharpeners like Jared Neve who agree. So I'm in that camp. I like 14C, and particularly the way that TwoSun does it. Now, we don't have jimping that's particularly useful here. It's rather smoothed over, rounded over bumps. So it does me almost no good, but I've got a nice platform there for my thumb. And this is being advertised by White Mountain Knives as a clip point. I'm certainly going to call that a Tanto. That is an Americanized Tanto with a chisel grind on the front. A definite demarcation line there between this flat grind, and this is flat, not hollow, and the flat grind out at the tip with a little bit of an upturn, kind of like a rhinoceros horn. And barely a swedge there, just ever so slightly breaking the edges of the spine of the knife there. And speaking of the spine of the knife, plenty of thickness. I like that. It's interesting in that they put a nice pocket in here with pretty sharp edges there to grab your thumb, but the detent on this knife is very strong. And I just put another tear in my reflector because I'm a little too close to the tripod. I'll get it out here. I've been working on the detent, a little bit of oil, a little bit of working in, a little heavy KPL on there, which works well sometimes if you can get it in that detent area. We have a titanium handle, and as I was getting to, so we've got a back flipper that works pretty well. You got to put some pressure on it. You're not going to be able to fail this knife, and I'm not saying that all copies will come through this way, but I've got to put a lot of pressure on there to get it to break free. You can see I can put a dent in my finger there. Other ways that they have designed it to open, but which you may not be able to open it with, here, with the thumb. It's grabby enough that if you really dig your thumb in there, you can flick that out. You might be able to finger flick it, but it's set far forward where ideally that fuller can be here, but we've lost the blade at that point into the handle, which is kind of a neat feature in itself, that most of the blade hides in there below the level of the handle. No danger here of picking up the point with your finger. That's well protected by the backspacer that is really just a pommel spacer. And we've got a very nice looking, I like it, very modern looking clip that is satin finished. Not satin finished, I'd say more of a bead blast. It's got a satiny look to it, but it is a bead blast. It's a frame lock folder with a hardened steel insert and about 50% lockup, 45 to 50% lockup. Easily disengaged. We've got a pretty good relief there and a chamfer on the lock bar, and it runs very smooth on bearings, virtually drop shut, very smooth, great action. We have a bead blasted whatchamacallits. Well, it's all part of the frame, really. It's not a bolster. I could call it a bolster, I suppose. The setup itself is kind of a bolster lock. So you can see that we've got the handle slab covering the frame. And typically when it's set up this way, we're calling it a bolster lock. But, you know, terminology is terminology. There's so many different styles of knives. Yes, there is a lot of universal terminology, but there's a lot where you can call it one thing or call it the other. As the old saying goes, call me what you like, but don't call me late for dinner. Ha ha ha. You can see straight through that sizable lanyard hole. Those of you that don't like that, you're going to have to sort of ignore it. Those that do, you've got plenty of room for whatever kind of cord you want to put through there. As I said, the jimping offers pretty much nothing, but it is decorative. And I like the overall look of the knife. It's a good size knife. What size is it? Well, the TS366 is just shy of 8.5 inches, whatever you want to call that. 8.4, let's call it. We have a blade length of almost 3 3/4. We're going to have to call that 3.6, let's say, and a cutting edge of about the same. For thicknesses in inches, 0.57 for the handle. Blade's not going to be terribly thick, 0.13, or in millimeters, 3.3 millimeters. And a weight, I noticed that it's not weight relieved, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. We have for a weight, lighter than I thought, 4.08 ounces. That is lighter than I thought. Okay, so although there is no weight relieving on the inside, and we'll verify that, I like to fact check myself, you know. I want to just be spouting off whatever I happen to think. No weight relieving in there. No, sir. I can attest to that now. And beautiful drop shut action, though. Just really, really nice, and it's a handsome knife. Some comparisons today, a little different than the usual. We have the Huggin by Real Steel that I did a review on not that long ago. And the Huggin is coming in just a bit shy of the overall length of the TS366. Blades, however, are pretty much the same. Axis style bar lock on the Huggin. Very nice knife. It's just really, really out there. I mean, not out there, but just in the groove. Designed by Ivan Braganets. And how about the Grazioso from Kaiser, a manganese design. It is just a tiny bit shorter overall and a little bit shorter blade length. Beautiful knife with a brass bolster. Micarta handle. How about Griptilian? And the Griptilian is coming in about 3/4 of an inch shorter, with the blade very close to the same, slightly shy. Finally, rat one time. Here we go. And rat one, and I'm looking directly overhead, is about a 1/4 inch longer, maybe closer to a half. So good sized knife. Nice neutral stick-like ergos with a little bit of a finger groove there. And lines up nicely. A little bit of adjustment, of loosening and tightening a few times and oiling improves the initial action on the knife, with the exception of the detent that is still working in, and maybe you'll get one that has a perfect detent. I find this is a little on the heavy side. Oh yeah, one feature that I picked up when I first saw the knife and meant to mention, but didn't. We have the lockup on this as a hidden pins. So we have internal pins, internal stop pins, with no lockup on a external pin, if that's the name you want to give it. Let's see if I can light this up just a little better. I think you can see those pins. They're the twin pins right there, and they hide down in there. Here they are. And there's a channel on both sides inside the frame that they ride on. And that gives you a very solid lockup where you've got those 2 points of contact equal on each side of the blade and into the frame. And some very smooth knives and very stable, tightly locked up knives use that system. So there you have it, by Rihe Designs, the TS366. Let me know if you like this knife and this review. I'll be back soon. Take care.